Welcome back everyone, it's time to go balls deep. Today there's a lot to discuss because it's happening. We are finally seeing Devil Fruit's awakenings.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Okay, we don't actually see Luffy's awakening itself, but we know it's coming very soon.
No! No! No!
Okay, listen. We do, however, get a lot of information in chapter 1030 of One Piece about what an awakening for our boy Luffy could be. We have been waiting years for more information about awakenings, where the last time anything about it was mentioned was in chapter 882 by Katakuri, when he just said, "My powers are awakened." Before that, it was with Doflamingo in chapter 785, when he stated, "It's very rare, but some powers can awaken and affect objects aside from the wielder." This was in fact the very first introduction and explanation of awakening, so I don't blame those who completely forgot that awakening devil fruits were even a thing. Pretty much guys, in very rare circumstances, a person can awaken their devil fruit, increasing their overall use of abilities by extending it to other objects around them. So with the whole One Piece community having a hard-on for the word awakening, it was no surprise that it was the most talked about event from this chapter.
I don't know, Yusuf. Twitter's saying it wasn't.
Wait, what? What do you mean?
I have to break your neck. It's just the way it is. I'm just a messenger.
Guys, don't be like these lot on Twitter, overreacting over every little thing. I can't believe I saw people saying that they are dropping One Piece now because of this chapter. Why are you doing all the hatings, huh?
Stop it. Get some help.
Instead, you should comment on this video just like Pixel Gaming YT123, Phantom_Reaper, Micah Sage Bolden, Darius Johnson, and most importantly, Brafart. I didn't forget about you, Brafart. Literally, thank you lot for the super thanks that you gave. Honestly, most of you probably didn't even know this feature exists.
So true.
Well, basically, you just need to press that heart button with the $sign on the video you're watching and give us support to keep producing and covering mangas and animes you guys want.
Hello. I like money.
Now, before I continue, obviously we're talking about a manga that a lot of people care about and love. But did you know there's other kinds of awesome stories?
Well, you're lying. No.
There's also only one place to get the best experience whilst reading them. Introducing Pocket Comics!
Holy moly.
Pocket Comics is a premium webtoon platform that features over 400 webtoons, including solo leveling. You can organize and specify what you want to read by choosing your preferred genre and see what other people are loving at the moment with the ranking section. And if you happen to like romance fantasy, then they got you extra covered, as they have tons of titles in that genre that you won't find anywhere else. Plus, with the Falling in Love campaign they're having right now, you can get more free episodes of romance titles than usual. So again, if that's your thing, jump on the deal right now. And the best part of all of this is, if you guys sign up right now, you can get yourself free coins and tickets to get yourself started. So check out Pocket Comics today by clicking the link in the description and comment section below. Okay, so before I respond to all of the critiques about this chapter and go into exactly how Laws and Kid's awakening indicates Luffy's awakening and what it could possibly mean, let's run through chapter 1030. We begin the chapter with a conversation between Apu and ex-Drake, where Apu is trying to convince Drake into an alliance with him. Basically, it looks like Apu has 3 numbers on his side, and with how the battle between the Beast Pirates and the Samurai Alliance is turning out, neither parties will come out unharmed. So as the two sides take each other out, Drake, Apu and the 3 numbers will swoop in and get the real victory royale. However, Drake doesn't seem too sure of this proposition, as he knows it was Apu who tricked Kids and Hawkins into an alliance and gave them up to Kaido. Apu tries once again telling Drake that this arrangement is mutually beneficial for both of them. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Honestly, Apu is just being a sussy baka right about now.
See me sus lately, sussy baka.
Teaming up with Drake, a member of the Tobiropo, and with the 3 numbers behind him, his chances of survival out of this war become stronger. However, Apu doesn't know that Drake has already switched sides and is kind of in an alliance with the Straw Hats, as we saw in chapter 991. Hopefully we'll see Apu get a taste of his own medicine, as we know he was working for Kaido when he duped Hawkins and Kids. And unlike Apu, ex-Drake is a veteran when it comes to being a double agent, so let's just see how how this turns out. We then cut to Nami, Usopp and Otama's group running down the stairs, escaping from the spreading fire. There they are startled by a running torso. However, Usopp and Nami realizes that is Kinemon's legs. This was clearly a playback to Punk Hazard. Usopp jumps on the leg asking if he's Kinemon, but the leg just screams about finding its allies. And just for those who don't understand how Kinemon's lower half is speaking, well, he is speaking from his ass, literally farting away. Now, Usopp actually tries to have a conversation with, Kinemon's lower half, to the point where Nami has to point out that he doesn't have any ears.
You idiot.
Big Brain Nami then proceeds to communicate with the lower half of Kinemon by using her finger to draw a crescent moon on his back, which represents the mark of the rebellion. Kinemon, feeling Nami's hand, senses that it's a moon and stops freaking out, understanding that his lower half is with his allies. He then informs them about Kiku, who is barely breathing in the attic alongside the rest of the scabbards.
He needs some milk!
Now with that, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The biggest writing blunder of the year, no, the century according to Twitter.
That's it. I'm going to clown college.
So the problem everyone seems to be having is the fact that Oda isn't pulling through when it comes to the depth of characters. Ardell pointed a similar issue with Black Clover, especially when it came to characters like Gaja. The thing is, some of you guys in the community seems to be losing the plot, thinking Oda is on the same level to any other human being. Are you guys crazy? Now, as someone who has late night calls with the man himself to further my goals in becoming the Pirate King, I completely understand what Oda is trying to do. And that's why you guys have to smash that like button and have that notification bell dinged. So let's break this down. Throughout One Piece, Oda has depicted death as a means to leave a mark or will to the people that are affected by their death. An example is Usopp, Nami, Robin, Frankie, Sanji, Chopper with at least one of their parents or guardians. These are story building deaths, and even though they are past tense, they are not off screen, giving us the audience the ability to relate to these characters. Then we have the present deaths, which have the same goal and effect as these other deaths, like we see with Ace and Whitebeard. Even more recently, Pedro and Yasui. Ace was needed for Luffy, Whitebeard for the world, Pedro for the Minks, and Yasui for the Red Scabbards and the Alliances. So Oda is very capable of killing important characters. However, if it doesn't bring too much significance to the plot or character development, then Oda will simply refrain from doing so. And if you guys think about it, Kinemon's death wouldn't really bring a huge impact to the story. Maybe the Red Scabbards and Momonosuke, but you have to understand that even Momonosuke went through character building with the use of the death of his parents. What Momo needed now was just a push, which he got from Luffy. This brings us to the second type of death which we see in One Piece, the momentary death, where we believe a character should be dead or is dead, later revealing that they are alive and well. We've seen this pre-timeskip with Igaram, Pell and Mr. 2 in the Alabasta arc, Viper at the end of Skypiea, Sabo from Luffy's flashback. Oda has been teasing us like this for ages, so it's not like he's changing his writing style or adopting someone else's. Rather, Oda is very consistent. Now, I do agree it would make a lot of sense to lose at least one of the Red Scabbards during this war, or at least an important character to make the overall arc more meaningful. But if you have been reading One Piece for 20 years like I have, you will come to the conclusion that Oda doesn't need to do this to make an excellent arc. This moves us to the second gripe the community had with this chapter, which was the way Oda reintroduced Awakening, but I'll come to that more in a bit. Back in the attic, Kanjuro is also alive, with Orochi on the snail trying to find out what happened. Orochi praises Kanjuro for his great performance, but also adds that the bitterness and resentment still rippling through him due to the Scabbards and Momonosuke still being alive, he cannot appreciate his play. The Kurozumi's ancestors are still unsatisfied, so he instructs Kanjuro to give them an even bigger encore. Use his painting to depict the burning wrath of the Kurozumi clan. Kanjuro complies as he tells Orochi to enjoy his final show, the suicide pact of the Kurozumi clan. Before Kanjuro finally bites the dust, he manages to finish his final act, the Kazenbo, a huge giant fire demon that sets anything it touches ablaze. Strangely, this demon looks very similar to the avatar Kanjuro picked for himself during chapter 974 in his meeting with Orochi to become an actor to trick the Scabbards. The fact that in his dying moments he drew this avatar means that that Kanjuro saw his actions and himself as a demon, burning and destroying everything around him. This beast having no face could call back to the fact that Kanjuro, who became an actor and pretended to be someone else completely for such a long time after his family's death, had lost all identity. That's why Oda picked to name this fire demon after the yokai Kazenbo. That's right guys, the idea of Kazenbo actually comes out of an old Japanese folklore about a ghost that exists on the mountains Torebe-yama in Kyoto, which used to be a very important ritual site. I won't go too much into detail about this folklore, but what's important to know is that there was a Buddhist ritual held there that they set themselves on fire, burning to death for enlightenment. However, some of them didn't achieve enlightenment and are said to appear on the mountain still burning forever. Sounds creepy, right? But this is Oda we're talking about, so of course there's a deeper reason to name Kanjuro's demon a Kazenbo outside of both of them just being demons that appears to be on fire and burning. Oda clearly picked the Kazenbo because it's a Buddhist ghost. Buddhism teaches the doctrine called anatta. To sum it up, anatta pretty much means that humans who don't see themselves as oneself or have a soul, which goes back to Kanjuro's Kazenbo lacking a face because he has lost any and all identity of his self.
Explosion.
Regardless, no matter the reason for Kanjuro's choice of drawing, Kaido's men are quick to shout out and warn the others not to go near the demon, as some of them are roasted alive. We then see an overview of everything that is going on. Interestingly enough, we finally witness Cp0 making a move by leaving the guest room to do some stuff, likely to capture Nico Robin or to meet up with the coming marines. We then finally see Orochi, like the snake he is, sitting down in a warehouse, laughing to himself, saying how he doesn't care one bit about this war between pirates. He knows that the basement is filled with weapons that'll explode, taking everyone on the island outwitted. He's waiting for Fukurokuroku, that guy, I can't pronounce his name for shits, but you know who I'm talking about. But he's waiting for the long-haired dude to come pick him up so they can both escape the island before it explodes. It's not likely his plan of exploding the island would even work because we see Yamato with the mission to stop it, as she is already in the skull head of the island, heading towards the basement. But as Yamato looks up, she sees a huge explosion as Kid comes flying out with pieces of his big metal robot and Big Mom chasing after him on Prometheus with her sword ready to strike. Before Big Mom can make mincemeat out of Kid, we see a flashback between Kid and Law from just moments before. This very interaction literally broke the One Piece community. Kid asks Law if his Devil Fruit ability has awakened yet, where Law reveals he has awakened his Devil Fruit ability.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm! Everybody calm down!
Yes, I know it's pretty crazy. However, as he's not used to it yet, Law says it would take a lot of his energy and it's pretty much a last resort kind of thing. At this point, Kid also reveals he has awakened his Devil Fruit. Alright, calm down. Kid does also state that he has the same problem as Law. If he uses his awakened ability, he'll be out of energy quite quickly. But currently, there's not really any other way to beat Big Mom, so they just have to use it. But this revelation instantly shouts that Luffy having the ability to awaken his own Devil Fruit is not that far from the current story. We have to remember that Luffy's progression is on constant uphill, and it's not unrealistic to see Luffy a step ahead of his contemporaries. Luffy unlocked a new level to his Conquerors Haki, embedded it to his attack. This already pushed him into a Yonko level. However, after his fight with Kaido, Luffy will want to improve even further. Learning about awakening for a while, it's likely that Luffy is developing it himself. If you guys want to learn more about what Luffy's awakening could be, make sure to check out our Gear 5 video I did with Grand Line Review, as we go over the bouncy world Luffy's awakening will make. With that, we jump back to the present and we see that Law is behind Big Mom. He uses his new ability, Groom, which seems to make a small version of Room in his hands. Taking this Room, he uses another ability called Anesthesia to spread the Kroom over his sword. He jumps on Big Mom's back and stabs his sword into her, whilst the tip pops up on the other side. It seems his blade is now actually inside of her, bypassing her Haki and cutting her insides up, kinda like a scalpel. Law then shouts Shockwave, literally creating waves inside of her, causing Big Mom internal damage and even coughing up blood. Now, I know some of you are probably like, what? What's going on? Previously, Law wasn't able to use his ability on Big Mom due to her overpowering Haki. And now, just like that, he bypasses it? How is this possible? Well, by extending his Devil Fruit ability to his sword and then later to Big Mom herself, he is able to use his ability inside of her just like he's using it inside of himself. Does that make sense? I know a lot of you guys don't like this and think it was just an ass pull. I even saw comments in the community saying that this is some Awakening bargain sale.
Yes, naturally, it's a
Awakening bargain sale. Oda's just pulling out these random buffs in the middle of battle is so convenient. However, I feel as though there's a misconception in the community. So let me quickly remind you once again how Awakening works and what it really is. Firstly, the Awakening's effect will depend on which type of Devil Fruit the user has, as Awakened Zoan Fruit simply grants the user an extreme boost in strength, speed, durability, and overall recovery. Within the One Piece community, Chopper's Monster Point is seen as a forced awakening, but as this isn't confirmed, a more relevant example of Awakened Zoan would be the Jailer Beast of Impel Down. Now in the case of Paramecia types, Awakening is seen to allow the user to spread their power to their surroundings or objects, matching the nature of their Devil Fruit power, to then be able to manipulate and transform the material as they would do to their own bodies. Some examples are Doflamingo Ito Ito no Mi, where he's able to manipulate the ground and buildings into strings that he can control. Another example is Katakuri, where he was able to turn his surroundings into mochi using his Mochi Mochi no Mi. Now I know there are Paramecia fruits which already allow the user to affect its surroundings, like the Guro Guro no Mi with Tremor Fruit, but the difference between that and Awakening is that the user is able to literally transform their surrounding and control it with just their minds as they would their own body. It's literally an extension of oneself. The way we see Awakening as a huge buff is wrong. Rather, it's just an idea of how to use one's Devil Fruit differently, specifically on how to apply the power of a Devil Fruit to the surroundings and other objects. If you guys recall back to when Awakening was introduced back in chapter 785 by Doflamingo, he literally said it's very rare, but some powers can awaken and affect objects aside from the wielder. Whilst the two times we've seen this with Katakuri and Doflamingo, their awaken ability allowed them to affect the environment and change it. But here we have seen Law using his awakened ability to affect his sword, later then extending it to Big Mom. This isn't an ass pull or changing the rule of how awakened Devil Fruits work. And the fact that this was revealed in midst of battle, well, with the case of Law and Kid, both acknowledge that they are limited in using this power as it takes too much energy. So there's an equivalent exchange, just like Gear 2 and Gear 3 was with Luffy. This ain't Oda becoming old and losing his sense of writing. Some of you guys just need to put respect on Golda's name.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
But coming back to the chapter, Big Mom, who is shocked as after coughing up some blood, turns to look at Law, getting ready to attack him. But before she's able to make a move, we see Kid finally being useful for once in his life and tells Big Mom that he'll actually be super kind and assign her a new power. This basically turns Big Mom into a big giant magnet. We then see her sword Napoleon smack and attach itself to her head. Then we see everyone's weapon in the room start to fly towards Big Mom, along with anything at all that has metal slamming right into her. And I know you guys are probably freaking out right now saying, Nani, you just said that Awakening can only affect objects. When Doflamingo said Awakening affects objects aside from the wielders, we all assumed that it meant it could only affect inanimate objects. But with Kid now showing that he's able to extend his magnet power and affect Big Mom, all objects are available to potentially be affected, living or not. Which could also explain Law's new ability, as well as him being able to bypass Haki using Croom and Anastasia. By putting Croom on his sword with Anastasia and stabbing it into Big Mom, much like he's able to stab himself, he can now alter her insides, pretty much making the insides of Big Mom his room.
Nice.
This all would line up with what we know and have seen of Awakened Devil Fruits in the series so far. In fact, Oda has played it pretty straight with us with what kind of abilities you could get with an Awakened Fruit. My man has been writing manga for over 20 years now, guys. Put some trust into him. But with that, I hope everyone understands that awakening with living objects is just like sharing one's Devil Fruit. Hence why it can bypass Haki, because it's not about will, rather it works quite differently. If you guys want me to go in much detail about awakened fruits and maybe explain every single awakened abilities so far, let me know in the comment section down below, because I still have a lot to say. With that guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Smash that like button, subscribe and ding the notification bell to keep updated with all our content. Till then, I'll catch you next time.